High above the rolling hills of western North Carolina, nestled in a quiet clearing surrounded by ancient trees, lies a site that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and indigenous storytellers for centuries. Massive boulders strewn across the earth like the discarded toys of giants bear strange and intricate carvings, shapes, symbols, and figures that seem to whisper secrets from a time long forgotten. This is Judaculla Rocks, a place where the past feels alive, where every groove in the stone tells a story older than memory itself. Who created these mysterious petroglyphs? What were they trying to communicate across the ages? And why does this site hold such profound significance for the Cherokee people who have guarded its legends for generations? Step into this enigmatic landscape with me, and let's unravel the threads of a mystery that stretches back thousands of years. According to Cherokee tradition, these carvings were made by Judaculla, a towering, otherworldly being who ruled the mountains with supernatural power. His handprint, they say, is etched into one of the rocks, a mark of his presence and a warning to those who dare disturb his domain. But modern archaeologists see something else entirely, a rare and precious window into the lives of ancient Native American cultures, a puzzle waiting to be decoded. The truth may lie somewhere in between, buried in the intersection of myth and science, where every scratched line could hold a clue. This isn't just a story about rocks. It's a journey into the heart of human curiosity, a testament to our endless desire to understand the unknown. As we explore the theories, the legends, and the cutting-edge research surrounding Judaculla Rocks, you'll discover why this site has captivated imaginations for so long. From eerie tales of supernatural guardians to groundbreaking discoveries that challenge our understanding of early American history, the secrets of these carvings are more fascinating than you might expect. So stay with me, because what we're about to uncover isn't just a glimpse into the past, it's a revelation about the enduring power of storytelling, the resilience of cultural memory, and the mysteries that still await us hidden in plain sight. Deep in the misty folds of Jackson County, North Carolina, where the Appalachian Mountains rise like the spine of an ancient beast, the Judaculla Rocks sit in quiet isolation. This isn't the kind of place you stumble upon by accident. Tucked away on a sloping hillside, surrounded by dense forests and the distant murmur of creeks, the site feels both hidden and sacred, as if the land itself is keeping a secret. The boulders, some as large as small houses, are made of soapstone, a soft rock that ancient peoples favored for carving. Their surfaces are a tapestry of grooves, circles, and human-like figures, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain but still strikingly clear. When European settlers first documented these carvings in the 1800s, they had no idea what they'd found. To them, the markings were curiosities, maybe the work of some long-lost tribe, maybe just odd natural formations. But the Cherokee people knew better. For them, this place was never lost. Their oral traditions speak of Judaculla, a slant-eyed giant who could leap across mountains and command the weather. They say these carvings are his doing, his handprint, his stories, his warnings. And long before settlers arrived, Cherokee elders were guiding their children to this spot, teaching them to respect the power etched into the stone. Archaeologists now believe the carvings date back at least 1,000 years, possibly even earlier. The soapstone holds clues that science is only beginning to decipher. Some symbols resemble those found at other ancient Native American sites, hinting at a shared cultural language across tribes. Others are utterly unique, their meanings locked away in a time before written records. What's clear is that this wasn't just a random gathering place. The positioning of the rocks, the precision of the carvings, the way the site aligns with certain celestial events, everything suggests it was a sacred space, a bridge between the earthly and the spiritual. Yet for all its significance, Judaculla Rocks remained largely unknown outside local law until the 20th century. Even today, reaching the site feels like stepping into a forgotten chapter of history. The air hums with the weight of untold stories, and the carvings seem to shift under changing light, as if they're still speaking to those who know how to listen. Whether you see them as the art of an ancient people, the marks of a mythical giant, or something even more mysterious, one thing is certain: this place was never meant to be ordinary. It was made to be remembered. Among the Cherokee people, the story of Judaculla isn't just a legend, it's a living thread woven into the fabric of their history. This towering figure, often described as a slant-eyed giant, wasn't merely a character in folklore. He was a powerful, otherworldly guardian, a being who straddled the line between the physical and the spiritual realms. According to their oral traditions, Judaculla possessed claws so immense and sharp that they could carve stone as easily as a knife cuts through soft earth. The markings at Judaculla rocks, those weren't just random scratches to the Cherokee. They were his handiwork, a testament to his presence, his strength, and his enduring connection to the land. The tales describe him as a ruler of the mountains, a being who could leap from peak to peak in a single bound and summon storms with a flick of his hand. His name, Judaculla, translates roughly to "he who has them slanting," a reference to his piercing, otherworldly eyes that could see beyond the veil of the ordinary world. To the Cherokee, these rocks weren't just a collection of carvings, they were a boundary marker, a place where the mundane and the supernatural collided. Step too close without respect, and you might just awaken his wrath. Elders warned that disturbing the rocks could bring misfortune, sickness, or even the giant's direct intervention. But the significance of Judaculla goes deeper than cautionary tales. His story reflects the Cherokee understanding of balance between humans and nature, between the seen and unseen worlds. The rocks served as a spiritual crossroads, a place where prayers and offerings were made, where ceremonies might have been held to honor the forces that governed their lives. Some believe the carvings themselves functioned as a kind of map or message board, guiding travelers or marking sacred paths through the landscape. Others suggest they were a record of celestial events, aligning with the stars to track seasons or signal important moments in the spiritual calendar. What's fascinating is how these legends persist, even as modern archaeology offers alternative explanations. For the Cherokee, the myth of Judaculla isn't contradicted by scientific findings. It exists alongside them, enriching the site's meaning rather than competing with it. The giant story isn't just about explaining the carvings, it's about preserving a way of seeing the world, one where the land is alive with history and meaning. Every groove in the stone, every eerie silhouette of a human or animal figure, carries the weight of generations who have passed these stories down, ensuring that Judaculla's presence is never forgotten. Even today, Cherokee storytellers keep the tradition alive, reminding us that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only honored. Standing in front of the Judaculla rocks is like staring at a grand, ancient canvas, one where every line and curve tells a story we're still learning to read. Spread across more than 240 square feet of weathered soapstone, over 1,500 individual carvings create a mesmerizing puzzle. The sheer scale is staggering, intricate patterns of concentric circles, some perfectly symmetrical, others swirling like ripples in water. Footprints, some human, some eerily elongated, traverse the rock face as if frozen mid-step. Winding serpentine designs twist and coil, their purpose as mysterious today as when they were first carved. What makes these petroglyphs even more remarkable is their canvas, soapstone, a surprisingly durable rock that has resisted centuries of erosion. Unlike softer surfaces that might have crumbled under time's relentless touch, this stone preserved the carvings with astonishing clarity. The grooves themselves vary in depth, some shallow whispers on the surface, others dug deep with deliberate precision. This variation raises intriguing questions. Were the deeper marks meant to last longer? Were they carved at different times by different hands, each adding to a growing tapestry of meaning? The artistic style is both familiar and alien. Some symbols echo designs found at other ancient Native American sites, suggesting shared cultural motifs. But others defy easy comparison, their shapes unique to this hillside. Among the most striking are the humanoid figures, their limbs often outstretched as if in motion or prayer. One particularly haunting carving resembles a being with horns or antennae, fueling speculation about spiritual visions or otherworldly encounters. Then there are the abstract patterns, grids, zigzags, and clusters of dots that might have served as maps, calendars, or even sacred equations lost to time. What's equally fascinating is how the carvings interact with the natural landscape. Some align with fissures in the rock, as if the artists incorporated the stone's own fractures into their design. Others seem positioned to catch the light at certain times of day or year, hinting at celestial connections. The Cherokee have long held that this place is alive with energy, and standing here, it's hard not to feel it. The rocks don't just display art, they seem to breathe with it, each groove a fingerprint of the past waiting to be deciphered. Whether created as a sacred text, a territorial marker, or a message to future generations, one thing is undeniable: these carvings were meant to endure. And as the wind rustles through the surrounding trees, carrying voices we can almost but not quite hear, the rocks remain silent, steadfast, and still guarding their secrets. How exactly did ancient hands carve these intricate designs into solid stone? The methods used to create the Judaculla petroglyphs remain a subject of heated debate among researchers, each theory offering a glimpse into the ingenuity of the people who left their mark here. One prevailing idea points to stone tools, hammerstones, and sharpened quartz or flint chisels capable of pecking and grinding grooves into the relatively soft soapstone. Archaeologists have found similar tools at other Native American sites, lending credibility to this approach, but replicating the carvings with stone alone proves harder than it seems. Experimental attempts show that even with skilled hands, creating such precise, continuous lines requires exhausting labor, days or even weeks of patient, relentless work. Another compelling theory suggests the use of fire-hardened wood. By charring the tips of sturdy branches in flame, ancient artisans could have created durable, pointed implements capable of scratching designs into the stone with surprising efficiency. This technique would explain some of the finer, shallower lines that seem too delicate for stone tools alone. Yet critics argue that wood, even hardened by fire, would wear down quickly against unyielding rock, making large-scale carvings impractical. Then there's the copper hypothesis. Though less common in this region, small amounts of native copper were traded across North America centuries before European contact. Some researchers propose that copper-tipped tools, sharper and more resilient than stone or wood, might have been employed to achieve the deeper, cleaner grooves visible on the rocks. Traces of copper residue found near similar petroglyph sites in the Great Lakes region add weight to this idea, though no direct evidence links it to Judaculla. Modern experimental archaeologists have tried all these methods, often with mixed results. One team spent months using replicated stone tools, only to find their carvings weathered away within a few seasons, raising questions about how the originals endured for millennia. Others discovered that combining techniques using stone for rough outlines and fire-hardened wood for finer details could mimic the petroglyphs more convincingly. But perhaps the most intriguing insight comes from Cherokee oral traditions, which speak of Judaculla's supernatural claws. Could these stories preserve a distant memory of tools or techniques now lost to time, whether through human skill, forgotten technology, or something more enigmatic? The creators of these carvings turned stone into story and left behind a mystery that still challenges our understanding of the past. Pinpointing the exact age of the Judaculla petroglyphs is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. The harder you grasp, the more elusive it becomes. Unlike artifacts buried in stratified soil layers or organic materials that can be carbon dated, these carvings exist on exposed rock faces, their origins shrouded in the slow dance of erosion and weathering. Current estimates swing wildly between 3,000 and 1,000 years old, a span so vast it encompasses entire civilizations rising and falling. Why such uncertainty? Because dating rock art requires piecing together clues from disciplines as varied as geology, archaeology, and even chemistry. One method researchers rely on is patination analysis, the study of how rock surfaces weather over time. When a groove is carved into stone, the fresh interior is exposed to the elements, beginning a centuries-long process of oxidation and mineral deposition. By measuring the depth and color of this patina, scientists can make educated guesses about a carving's age. But here's the catch: environmental factors like rainfall, acidity, and even lichen growth can dramatically alter the rate at which patina forms. A groove carved in a dry, sheltered spot might weather far slower than one exposed to constant moisture, skewing the timeline. At Judaculla, where the soapstone varies in density and the carvings face different directions, this inconsistency makes precise dating nearly impossible. Comparisons to similar sites offer another piece of the puzzle. Just 150 miles south, at George's Track Rock Gap, petroglyphs bear striking resemblances to those at Judaculla: concentric circles, humanoid figures, and serpentine designs. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal fragments from nearby hearths suggests those carvings were made between 1,000 and 500 years ago. Could Judaculla's artists have been part of the same cultural wave? Perhaps, but stylistic similarities don't always equate to identical time periods. Tribes across millennia and vast distances often shared symbolic languages, making it risky to assume contemporaneity based on art alone. Then there's the tantalizing overlap with Cherokee oral history. Their stories of Judaculla align roughly with the later end of the estimated range around 1,000 years ago, when Cherokee ancestors were known to inhabit the region. But could these tales preserve memories of even older events passed down through countless generations? Without physical evidence like tool fragments or pigment residues trapped in the grooves, we're left with a maddening paradox. The carvings are vivid, immediate, almost alive, yet their creators remain just out of reach, separated from us by centuries we can't quite measure. Cutting-edge techniques might eventually narrow the window. Laser scanning can now detect microscopic tool marks invisible to the naked eye, potentially revealing distinct signatures of different carving methods across eras. Soil analysis around the rocks may uncover pollen or ash layers that hint at human activity during specific climatic periods. But for now, Judaculla's age resists certainty, reminding us that some mysteries refuse to fit neatly into our timelines. Whether 3,000 years old or one, these carvings transcend their origins not just as artifacts, but as echoes of hands we'll never see, speaking in a language we're still learning to understand. Beneath the vast Appalachian sky, the Judaculla rocks may hold more than just earthly secrets. Some researchers believe these carvings are a celestial map, a stone-bound archive of the heavens as ancient artists saw them. Among the swirling patterns and enigmatic figures, certain designs stand out: concentric circles resembling solar disks, zigzag lines that mirror the path of comets, and clusters of dots that align eerily with known star formations. Could these glyphs be more than ritual symbols? Could they mark solstices, eclipses, or even celestial events so rare they'd sear themselves into cultural memory? This astronomical alignment hypothesis hinges on the soapstone's role as a kind of prehistoric observatory. Dr. James Mooney, an early ethnographer who recorded Cherokee traditions, noted how elders spoke of the rocks as a place where the sky touched the earth. Modern researchers like archaeoastronomer Dr. Kim Malville have mapped specific carvings against the night sky as it would have appeared over 2,000 years ago. One cluster of cup-shaped indentations, for instance, closely mirrors the Pleiades star cluster, a significant celestial marker for many indigenous cultures, often associated with planting seasons or spiritual ceremonies. Another series of radiating lines aligns with the sunrise during the winter solstice, casting shadows that animate the rock face like a slow-motion sundial. Critics argue that connecting petroglyphs to astronomical events is speculative, a case of seeing patterns where none may exist. They point out that soapstone weathers unevenly, potentially distorting original carvings over centuries. But proponents counter with cross-cultural evidence. From the sun-watching sun daggers of Choco Canyon to the lunar calendar petroglyphs of Scotland, ancient peoples worldwide encoded celestial knowledge into stone. At Judaculla, the most compelling case involves a serpentine glyph that curves precisely along the path of the Milky Way as visible from that latitude in late summer, a time when Cherokee oral tradition speaks of the great snake in the sky. Perhaps the boldest claim comes from researchers who have matched a rare, fan-like symbol to the Great Comet of 1861, a celestial spectacle so bright it was visible for months. Cherokee stories from that era describe a fire-haired visitor in the heavens coinciding with the comet's appearance. If the carving does depict this event, it would suggest some glyphs are far younger than others, added over generations as new skyward wonders demanded recording. Whether these alignments are deliberate or coincidental, one truth emerges. The carvers saw no division between Earth and cosmos. To them, the rocks weren't just canvases but conduits, a place where celestial cycles and terrestrial life intertwined. As the stars still wheel overhead today, unchanging yet ever-shifting in perspective, the Judaculla rocks silently pose their oldest question. Were these marks meant to track time, worship the heavens, or warn of celestial omens? The stones won't say, but their silence speaks volumes about how deeply our ancestors longed to read the sky. For the Cherokee people, time wasn't just measured in days and months, it was woven into the land itself, marked by the ripening of crops, the migration of animals, and the turning of the stars. Some researchers argue the Judaculla rocks served as a massive stone calendar, their carvings acting as both a farmer's almanac and a sacred timeline for ceremonies. Among the most striking symbols are the concentric circles which recur in clusters across the soapstone canvas. To modern eyes, they might resemble abstract art, but Cherokee elders have long interpreted these designs as representations of the sun, specifically the solstices and equinoxes that dictated planting and harvesting cycles. One compelling theory ties these solar motifs to the green corn ceremony, a pivotal Cherokee festival marking the first harvest of the year. During this event, communities gathered to give thanks, purify themselves, and renew social bonds. Petroglyphs near the rock's eastern edge align with the sunrise during the ceremony's traditional timing in late summer, suggesting the carvings may have functioned as a celestial alarm clock. When dawn light hit certain grooves, it signaled the moment to begin rituals, a practice seen in other indigenous sites like Choco Canyon sun daggers. But the calendar theory goes deeper. Zigzag patterns, often dismissed as decorative, could chart the dangerous moon's periods when late frosts or droughts threatened young crops. Cherokee agricultural lore speaks of these perilous windows, and the carvings might have served as a cautionary guide, reminding farmers to plant only when specific symbols were illuminated by moonlight. Even the seemingly random dots gain meaning under this lens. Clustered in groups of 7 or 13, they may tally lunar months between ceremonies or track the phases of the moon for hunting expeditions. Not all scholars agree, of course. Skeptics point out that without written records, linking specific glyphs to precise dates remains speculative. Yet the Cherokee's own oral traditions lend weight to the idea. Stories describe elders reading the rocks before directing the community to sow seeds or prepare for winter. Some accounts even mention ceremonial dances performed atop the stones during certain alignments, etching new grooves to honor the occasion. Whether the carvings were a formal calendar or a more fluid spiritual guide, their connection to Cherokee timekeeping reveals a profound truth. These markings weren't just about survival. They were a dialogue between people and the cosmos, a way of binding human lives to the rhythms of the earth and sky. The rock's most enigmatic figures, stylized human forms with upraised arms, might hold the final clue. In Cherokee tradition, these could represent the Booger dancers, ceremonial figures who appeared during seasonal festivals to drive away misfortune. If correct, the petroglyphs didn't just predict time, they enacted it, turning the soapstone into a stage where myth and reality intertwined. Every planting season, every harvest, every ceremony left its mark, not just in memory but in stone. The Judaculla rocks didn't merely record time, they embodied it, a perpetual reminder that for the Cherokee, the past was never truly gone. It waited in the grooves, ready to speak when the sun or moon struck the right angle, whispering secrets to those who still remembered how to listen. Beyond their visual mystery, the Judaculla rocks may have served as a powerful ceremonial ground, a place where sound, water, and stone converged to create an otherworldly sensory experience. Recent archaeological surveys of the surrounding area have uncovered pottery shards with distinctive Cherokee designs, along with projectile points and stone tools that match artifacts from known ritual sites. These scattered remnants suggest more than casual visits. They hint at gatherings where ceremony and daily life intersected, but the most compelling evidence lies in the landscape itself. Stand among the rocks on a quiet morning and you'll notice something extraordinary. The way even a whisper seems to ripple across the soapstone surface, bouncing between boulders in an eerie, amplified echo. This natural acoustics phenomenon isn't accidental. The rock's curved surfaces and strategic placement create a whispering gallery effect, where sound waves travel farther and clearer than in open air. For ancient peoples, this would have transformed chants, drumbeats, or spoken prayers into something transcendent, voices seemingly magnified by the land itself. Cherokee oral histories describe ceremonial leaders using the rocks as a speaking platform, where the right words spoken at the right angle could carry for miles. Modern experiments confirm this. A hand clap near the largest boulder produces a crisp, resonant response, while rhythmic percussion takes on an almost metallic quality, lingering in the air like distant thunder. Then there's the water. Just downhill from the petroglyphs, a natural spring surfaces a rarity at this elevation. Water held profound spiritual significance for the Cherokee, symbolizing purification and the boundary between worlds. The spring's proximity to the carvings suggests it may have been integral to rituals, perhaps used for blessings or vision quests. Imagine the scene, participants cleansing themselves in the cold, clear water before ascending to the rocks, where the combination of echoing chants, flickering torchlight, and the tactile presence of centuries-old carvings would have created an immersive spiritual theater. Even the soapstone's texture plays a role, slightly abrasive yet warm to the touch, grounding rituals in physical sensation. The artifacts found here add another layer. Among the pottery fragments, archaeologists identified pieces of ceremonial vessels thinner and more finely crafted than everyday cookware, some bearing traces of ochre pigment. These weren't utilitarian objects, they were vessels for offerings, possibly holding sacred tobacco, medicinal herbs, or ritual paints used to anoint the carvings. The projectile points tell a different story. Many are made of non-local stone, suggesting they arrived through trade or pilgrimage. Some show signs of deliberate killing, a practice where tools were ritually broken to release their spirit, a common funerary custom among southeastern tribes. Together, these clues paint a portrait of Judaculla rocks as a living sanctuary. The petroglyphs weren't just art, they were part of a multisensory ritual landscape. The echoes amplified prayers, the spring purified participants, and the carvings themselves, whether touched, repainted, or reinterpreted over generations, served as tactile anchors to the sacred. In a world without written liturgy, these stones became a script written in sound, water, and memory. Every chip in the soapstone, every worn path to the spring, every artifact left behind whispers the same truth. This was a place where people didn't just mark time. They touched the divine. When European settlers first encountered the Judaculla rocks in the early 19th century, they brought more than just curiosity. They carried assumptions that would leave lasting scars. To these newcomers, the intricate carvings were either meaningless scratches or evidence of a lost civilization, anything but the work of the indigenous people still living among them. Some speculated the markings were made by Vikings, a theory fueled by fantastical notions of pre-Columbian transatlantic voyages. Others insisted they were the handiwork of a mythical vanished race, like the Welsh Prince Madoc's supposed followers or even survivors of the lost Roanoke colony. These theories, though wildly inaccurate, reveal more about the settlers' worldview than the carving's true origins, a refusal to credit Native Americans with such sophisticated artistry. The damage went beyond misinterpretation. Early records describe settlers chiseling their own initials alongside the ancient glyphs, as if claiming the stones as their own. One particularly egregious act involved a local farmer who reportedly tried to blast apart the rocks with gunpowder, believing they harbored hidden treasure. Weathering patterns show where sections were scrubbed clean with abrasive tools, either in misguided attempts to restore the carvings or simply out of disregard for their sacredness. Even well-meaning scholars contributed to the harm. 19th century ethnographers like Charles Lanman took hammer and chisel to the site, removing fragments for study without consent from the Cherokee people. Each act of vandalism erased not just grooves in stone but layers of cultural memory. Meanwhile, the Cherokee watched in anguish as their sacred site suffered. Oral histories recount elders standing guard at the rocks, intercepting trespassers with warnings about Judaculla's wrath. Some families maintained secret vigil over the site even after the Trail of Tears forced most Cherokee westward in the 1830s. Those who remained in North Carolina, now the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, quietly preserved the stories their ancestors had tied to these carvings. Where settlers saw idle curiosities, the Cherokee recognized a spiritual library, one whose books were being burned page by page. The clash of perspectives couldn't have been starker. While settlers spun tales of Viking runes, Cherokee tradition held that disturbing the rocks risked unleashing Judaculla's fury, a belief some suspect was intentionally emphasized to deter vandalism. Tribal leaders today recall grandparents speaking of strange illnesses befalling those who defaced the carvings, whether by coincidence or something more profound. This cultural divide persisted into the 20th century when the site gained nominal protection as a local landmark. Yet even then, guidebooks perpetuated myths about Celtic origins or Phoenician visitors, drowning out Cherokee voices in their own ancestral landscape. Only in recent decades has the narrative begun to shift. Modern archaeologists now collaborate with the Eastern Band, using ground-penetrating radar to study the site without invasive digging. Cherokee knowledge keepers work alongside scholars to document oral histories before they fade. Where early settlers saw a puzzle to solve, today's researchers recognize a living tradition, one that survived suppression, forced removal, and centuries of disbelief. The scars remain, but so does the resilience of those who never stopped seeing Judaculla rocks for what they truly were. Not a mystery to be claimed, but a story to be honored. The 20th century brought both revelation and loss to the study of Judaculla rocks, a period where science began systematically documenting the site just as time and neglect erased precious details. Among the most significant efforts were the Smithsonian Institution's expeditions in the 1950s, when teams of archaeologists spent months meticulously tracing every visible carving onto translucent vellum sheets. These fragile records, now stored in climate-controlled archives, capture glyphs that have since vanished, victims of acid rain, lichen growth, and the relentless scouring of wind-blown grit. One particularly haunting transcription shows a detailed human figure with outstretched arms, its outline crisp on the archival paper. Today, only a ghostly shadow remains on the actual stone, the grooves so faint they disappear in certain lights. These mid-century surveys weren't just about preservation. They mark the first rigorous attempt to interpret the carvings through a scientific lens. Researchers noted recurring motifs like the sunburst patterns that appeared near natural fissures in the rock and speculated about their possible ceremonial functions. They also documented subtle alignments, how certain carvings lined up with the summer solstice sunrise or framed the distant peak of Cold Mountain, a place sacred to the Cherokee. Yet even as these studies advanced understanding, they carried an unspoken urgency. Expedition journals from 1956 express frustration at being a step behind erosion, racing to record what the elements were steadily reclaiming. Modern technology has since transformed the field. LiDAR scans laser imaging that penetrates vegetation and surface debris revealed hidden glyphs entirely invisible to the naked eye. In 2015, a survey team discovered a sprawling network of previously unknown carvings extending downhill from the main site. These included serpentine grooves following underground water veins and a cluster of tiny, precise dots that may represent a star cluster no longer visible due to shifts in Earth's axial tilt. Most astonishing was the detection of phantom glyphs, areas where the soapstone's molecular structure showed alterations consistent with ancient carving, even though the surface markings had completely worn away. It's as if the rocks themselves remember what human eyes can no longer see. Yet for all their precision, these high-tech methods raise new questions. The LiDAR data suggests some carvings were modified or expanded over centuries, with older designs incorporated into newer compositions. One intriguing theory posits that certain glyphs were intentionally placed where natural weathering would accentuate them over time, a deliberate collaboration between artist and environment. Meanwhile, thermal imaging has exposed seasonal patterns, how morning dew collects differently in man-made grooves compared to natural ones, creating fleeting, shimmering outlines during autumn sunrises. The Cherokee have watched these scientific advances with cautious interest. While some tribal members collaborated with researchers, others voiced concerns about treating sacred symbols as mere data points. A 1978 oral history captures an elder's warning. You can measure the lines, but who measures the power in them? This tension between empirical study and spiritual reverence remains unresolved. Still, the partnership has yielded unexpected gifts like the rediscovery of a lost carving matching descriptions in 19th century Cherokee texts, confirming oral traditions once dismissed as myth. What emerges from this century of study is a paradox. The same tools that unveil hidden layers also underscore how much has slipped away, how every storm, every careless footstep, every passing decade steals another fragment of the story. But the stones aren't done speaking. As long as fingers trace the grooves where ancestors once pressed their tools, as long as lasers reveal shadows of forgotten marks, the conversation between past and present continues. And somewhere in that dialogue, between the precision of science and the whispers of tradition, Judaculla's true story may yet emerge. Among the most striking features of Judaculla rocks are the so-called seven-footed carvings, massive, elongated footprints pressed deep into the soapstone as if left by a being of impossible stature. These aren't the delicate impressions of human feet. They stretch nearly twice the length of a grown man's stride, with unnaturally arched toes and exaggerated heels that suggest something beyond ordinary anatomy. To the Cherokee, these were the unmistakable marks of Judaculla himself, proof of the giant's physical presence and his otherworldly nature. But modern scholars grapple with a more earthly puzzle. What cultural or spiritual purpose could these colossal footprints have served? One interpretation ties the prints to shamanic rituals. In many indigenous traditions, footprints symbolize spiritual journeys, the crossing between worlds. A Cherokee elder once described the carvings as doorways, places where medicine people could commune with ancestral spirits or harness the giant's power. The number 7 holds particular significance. It recurs in Cherokee cosmology as a sacred numeral representing the heights of the upper world. Some researchers suggest shamans may have ritually walked these grooves during vision quests, their own feet overlapping the giant's to invoke his strength. The depth of the carving supports this theory, worn smoother than surrounding glyphs, as if touched or retraced repeatedly over generations. Yet another angle emerges from global folklore. Across cultures, from the Norse Jötnar to the Hindu deities, giants often personify natural forces, earthquakes, storms, or the shaping of mountains. Judaculla's footprints might encode a similar metaphor, a geological memory of landslides or glacial shifts that once reshaped these valleys. Cherokee stories describe the giant leaping across peaks, his steps carving valleys and leaving behind the bones of the earth. Could these petroglyphs be a poetic retelling of actual seismic events, preserving ancestral warnings about unstable terrain? The most controversial theory comes from fringe researchers who note the print's anatomical strangeness: the elongated midfoot, the splayed toes resembling no known human or animal. Some speculate they depict an unknown hominid species, while others whisper of supernatural encounters. But mainstream archaeologists dismiss these claims, pointing to stylization common in ritual art. A compelling middle ground suggests the prints combine elements, part deity, part shamanic symbol, part territorial marker. Their placement near the rock's highest point hints at a boundary, perhaps a warning that beyond lay Judaculla's domain, where only the brave or foolhardy dared tread. Whatever their origin, the footprints resonate with an eerie immediacy. Stand beside them today, and you'll notice how their orientation aligns with the sunset during the autumn equinox, casting long shadows that seem to step across the landscape. This interplay of light and stone feels intentional, a reminder that these carvings were never meant to be static art. They were alive with meaning, changing with the seasons, the time of day, the angle of observation. Whether walked by a giant, a shaman, or the collective memory of a people, these seven-footed marks remain one of Judaculla's most enduring enigmas, a trail left not just in rock but in the imagination. While Judaculla rocks may stand alone in Cherokee tradition, they're far from the only ancient canvas whispering across North America. Just west of Albuquerque, Petroglyph National Monument stretches across 17 miles of volcanic basalt, where over 24,000 carvings bear eerie parallels to the Appalachian glyphs. Many depict the same swirling spirals found at Judaculla. Some scholars interpret these as solar symbols, while others see them as maps of sacred migration routes. Among the most striking shared motifs is the thunderbird, a winged being carved with outstretched talons, appearing in nearly identical form at both sites despite the vast distance between them. Could this suggest some long-lost cultural exchange between ancestral Puebloan peoples and the Cherokee? Or does it hint at a deeper, universal human impulse to depict the forces of sky and storm? Further north, the mystery deepens at Dighton Rock in Massachusetts. Weighing over 40 tons and covered in geometric patterns and stick-figure humans, this riverside boulder has been called America's most contested petroglyph. Early European settlers attributed it to Vikings or Phoenicians, much like the wild theories surrounding Judaculla. But indigenous Wampanoag oral history describes it as a record of celestial events, with zigzag lines representing lightning spirits, not unlike Judaculla's weather-controlling legends. Even the rock's material tells a story. Like Judaculla's soapstone, Dighton's surface is soft enough for carving yet durable enough to preserve markings for centuries, suggesting ancient cultures intentionally sought out such canvases. Perhaps no site parallels Judaculla's blend of artistry and astronomy more than California's Little Petroglyph Canyon. Here, among thousands of carvings etched into volcanic rock, concentric circles align with solstice sunrises, mirroring the suspected calendar function of Judaculla's glyphs. One particular panel shows a procession of antlered figures nearly identical to the horned being carved in North Carolina. The distance between these sites is staggering, yet the shared visual language speaks volumes about how widely certain symbols may have traveled through trade networks or oral tradition. But it's in the southeastern United States where Judaculla's closest cousins emerge. At Georgia's Track Rock Gap, soapstone boulders display the same cup and ring markings and elongated footprints. Archaeologists note these carvings cluster near mountain passes, strategic points where territorial markers or spiritual warnings would carry maximum impact. Like Judaculla, many feature portals, symbols, spirals or ladders that may represent passages between worlds in southeastern tribal cosmologies. Even the methods of creation align. Microscopic analysis reveals similar pecking techniques using quartz-tipped tools. What binds these sites together isn't just artistry, it's intentionality. From the desert southwest to the Appalachian highlands, ancient peoples chose imposing, enduring canvases to encode their visions. Some messages were practical, migratory routes, celestial events, or resource locations. Others were sacred, prayers frozen in stone, boundaries between realms, or homages to beings like Judaculla who straddled myth and reality. Each site carries local nuances. The Puebloan glyphs favor desert fauna, while Cherokee carvings incorporate forest symbolism. Yet all share that universal human urge to say, "We were here." This mattered. The real revelation: these petroglyphs weren't created in isolation. Trade routes stretching thousands of miles connected these cultures, allowing symbols and stories to circulate long before European contact. A thunderbird carved in New Mexico might not be the same as Judaculla's slant-eyed giant, but both embody humanity's attempt to make sense of the untamable forces around them. And in that shared impulse to translate wonder into stone lies a connection no distance can break. Among the most perplexing carvings at Judaculla Rocks are clusters of symbols that hover tantalizingly between art and language, geometric shapes arranged in sequences that resemble writing, yet resist all attempts at translation. Some glyphs bear a haunting similarity to characters from the Cherokee syllabary, the writing system created by Sequoyah in the early 19th century. Angular lines intersect like the syllables Tielo or Hna, while looping curves echo the character for Yo. But here's the catch: these carvings predate Sequoyah's work by centuries, if not millennia. The resemblance is either a bizarre coincidence or evidence of something far more profound, a pre-existing symbolic tradition that may have influenced the syllabary's development. Linguists and epigraphers have spent decades wrestling with these glyphs, their frustration mounting with each dead end. The problem lies in the patterns. True writing systems, even nascent ones, display consistent repetition, predictable spacing, and contextual variation. Judaculla's symbols flirt with these rules but refuse to follow them. Certain sequences repeat at regular intervals, suggesting formulaic phrases or names. Yet just when a pattern seems clear, it fractures into abstraction. One particularly confounding panel shows a vertical row of 12 identical zigzags followed by 3 concentric circles, a combination found nowhere else on site. Is this a prayer, a genealogy, a warning? Without a bilingual Rosetta Stone to provide a key, the answers slip away like water through fingers. The challenge intensifies when comparing these carvings to other indigenous symbol systems across the Americas. Mesoamerican glyphs, for instance, often blend pictorial and phonetic elements. Could Judaculla's markings represent a similar hybrid, part illustration, part sound? Some researchers have attempted to apply Cherokee oral mnemonics to the symbols, treating them as memory aids rather than pure writing. A spiral might cue a flood story, while parallel lines could trigger a hunting chant. This approach shows promise, especially given the Cherokee tradition of reading petroglyphs aloud during ceremonies. But it's a fragile bridge between cultures separated by centuries. Technology offers new hope. Computational linguists have employed pattern recognition algorithms designed for undeciphered scripts like Linear A or Rongorongo. One 2021 study used AI to identify recurring clusters that human eyes had missed, groups of 3 dots consistently preceding serpentine lines, hinting at possible grammatical structure. Another team experimented with spatial analysis, mapping symbol density against known Cherokee settlement patterns. Their findings suggested the most intricate carvings clustered along ancient trade routes, as if serving as territorial markers or directional signs. Yet for all these high-tech efforts, the stones guard their secrets fiercely. Perhaps the glyphs were never meant to be read in a conventional sense. Cherokee elder Amonita Sequoyah, descendant of the syllabary's creator, once described them as stone dreams, not language, but something more fluid, where meaning shifts with the viewer's intention. In this light, the frustration of scholars mirrors an older tension, the Western urge to categorize clashing with indigenous ways of knowing that embrace ambiguity. The carvings may not be a puzzle to solve, but an invitation to listen, not to letters, but to the land itself. Every failed translation, every dashed hypothesis, brings us closer not to cracking a code, but to understanding how much lies beyond the limits of our alphabets. The boulders of Judaculla rocks aren't just notable for their carvings, their very substance seems to defy ordinary geology. Composed primarily of soapstone, a metamorphic rock rich in talc, these massive slabs possess an almost uncanny softness under pressure. Run your fingers across their surface, and you'll feel something startlingly smooth compared to typical Appalachian bedrock, a texture that made them irresistible canvases for ancient artists, but also fuels local legends about their otherworldly nature. Cut into the stone with a sharp tool, and a reddish powder rises from the grooves like mist. To early settlers, this phenomenon looked eerily like the rocks were bleeding, sparking tales of cursed ground and vengeful spirits. This bleeding effect actually stems from the soapstone's unique mineral cocktail. The talc base gives it that signature softness, while iron oxide deposits create the rust-colored dust when exposed to air. Modern geologists have mapped how these iron veins trace through the rock in branching patterns, sometimes coinciding perfectly with ancient carvings, almost as if the original artists incorporated these natural stains into their designs. But for generations of Cherokee, this wasn't just chemistry. Elders spoke of the rocks as living entities, their reddish exhalations proof of Judaculla's enduring presence. Some stories warn that those who carve new marks risk drawing the giant's blood, inviting misfortune upon themselves and their families. The site's geology holds even stranger surprises. Ground-penetrating radar reveals an extensive network of fractures beneath the main outcrop, creating hollow resonances that amplify sound in unpredictable ways. During heavy rains, water percolating through these cracks produces odd harmonic tones, a phenomenon that may explain old accounts of the rocks singing during storms. These same fractures also link to broader tectonic activity. The nearby Brevard Fault Zone, though relatively dormant today, experienced significant seismic shifts over millennia. Cherokee tradition preserves vivid descriptions of mountains shaking and rivers changing course, events modern seismologists confirm occurred around 1,000 years ago, precisely when Judaculla's legend first solidified in oral histories. Perhaps most compelling is how the soapstone's properties align with indigenous knowledge. Unlike granite or basalt, which resist carving, this stone hardens when exposed to fire, a fact Cherokee craftsmen exploited to create durable tools and vessels. The carvings themselves show evidence of heat treatment in their deepest grooves, suggesting ancient artists may have used fire to cure certain markings against erosion. This interplay between human ingenuity and geological happenstance creates a profound irony. The very softness that made the rocks vulnerable to vandalism also preserved the original petroglyphs, as later scratches weathered away while the fire-hardened ancient lines endured. Even the boulder's placement seems engineered by nature for dramatic effect. They cluster along a magnetic anomaly where compass needles dance unpredictably, a detail not lost on the Cherokee, who considered such places thresholds between worlds. During summer thunderstorms, the soapstone's high iron content makes it a lightning magnet, scorch marks radiating from certain carvings like dark sunbursts. Combine these traits with the site's acoustics, its bleeding wounds and its seismic whispers, and you begin to understand why this spot inspired such reverence. The Judaculla rocks don't merely sit in the landscape, they interact with it, shaping and being shaped by forces both earthly and unseen, their mineral bones humming with stories we've only begun to decode. For the eastern band of Cherokee Indians, Judaculla Rocks isn't an archaeological curiosity, it's a living relative. Elders like Mary Crow, a cultural preservationist raised on the Qualla boundary, describe visits to the site as checking in with an old teacher. She recalls childhood trips where grandparents would place offerings of tobacco in the carving's grooves, whispering prayers in Talogi, the Cherokee language. The rocks remember, she says, when you stand there, you're not just looking at history, you're standing where our ancestors stood when they spoke to Judaculla. This perspective clashes gently with academic approaches. While researchers meticulously document glyphs with laser scanners, Cherokee tradition bearers like Crow emphasize experiential knowledge, how certain carvings hum under fingertips during thunderstorms, or how winter frost highlights hidden shapes unseen in other seasons. The tension between preservation and access weighs heavily on tribal members. Increased tourism since the site's listing on the National Register of Historic Places in 1973 has brought both visibility and vulnerability. Elder Gilbert Wolfe recounts confronting visitors carving their initials beside ancient glyphs. They treated it like a picnic spot, not a church. Meanwhile, archaeologists express frustration when ceremonial practices like anointing carvings with herbal mixtures alter the very marking science seeks to preserve. These conflicts reveal deeper philosophical divides. Scientific preservation aims to freeze the site in time, while Cherokee stewardship views it as an evolving dialogue. You don't put your grandfather behind glass to preserve him, notes language teacher Jeremiah Sornock. You keep talking with him. Academic papers often describe the carvings as artifact clusters, but Cherokee oral histories animate them. Stories passed down through generations recount how certain glyphs glow faintly during the green corn ceremony, or how the seven-footed prints deepen after heavy rains, as if Judaculla revisits them. Such narratives are dismissed by some scholars as folklore, yet they align with curious geological phenomena. The soapstone's iron deposits do oxidize differently when wet, temporarily darkening specific carvings. What science calls mineral reactions, tradition interprets as communication. Compromise efforts now emerge. Tribal monitors work alongside park rangers to educate visitors, while university researchers consult Cherokee knowledge keepers before publishing findings. A recent collaboration used thermal imaging to study glyphs at sunrise, a method proposed by elders who noted decades ago that certain symbols wake up with dawn light. The results confirmed temperature variations matching ceremonial descriptions. It's a small but meaningful bridge between worldviews, proving that Judaculla's story isn't trapped in the past. It's being written anew in peer-reviewed journals and in the quiet prayers still offered at the rocks, where every whisper sent into the soapstone echoes across centuries. Over the years, the Judaculla rocks have attracted more than just archaeologists and historians. They've become a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts and UFO hunters convinced the site holds extraterrestrial secrets. Reports of strange phenomena at the location date back to Cherokee oral traditions, which speak of glowing orbs and disembodied voices near the carvings, but modern accounts take these mysteries even further. Visitors frequently describe sudden equipment malfunctions, cameras failing, compasses spinning wildly, and even drones losing power mid-flight above the boulders. Some researchers have measured unusual electromagnetic fluctuations in the area, spikes that defy typical geological explanations. These anomalies have fueled theories that the rocks sit atop some kind of energy vortex or even an interdimensional gateway, a place where the veil between worlds grows thin. One of the most persistent legends ties the carvings to ancient astronaut theories. Proponents point to the elongated, otherworldly figures etched into the soapstone beings with oversized eyes and elongated limbs that bear an uncanny resemblance to modern depictions of gray aliens. Could these glyphs represent encounters with visitors from the stars? Some ufologists argue the site's alignment with celestial events isn't just about tracking seasons but marking landing coordinates for otherworldly crafts. They highlight Cherokee stories of star people who descended from the sky to share knowledge, drawing parallels to similar myths from cultures worldwide. Skeptics dismiss these claims as overreach, but the sheer volume of unexplained sightings in the region keeps the debate alive. Then there are the lights. For decades, locals have reported eerie, hovering orbs near the rocks, especially during stormy nights or the autumn equinox. Witnesses describe them as pulsating globes of blue or white light that dart between trees before vanishing without a trace. One particularly chilling account from 2012 involves a group of campers who claim the carvings themselves began to glow faintly before an unseen force hurled their equipment across the clearing. Even the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians acknowledges these stories, though they interpret them through a spiritual lens, manifestations of Judaculla's lingering presence rather than extraterrestrial activity. Theories grow stranger still when geology intersects with the supernatural. The soapstone's high iron content and underground fissures create natural magnetic distortions, which some believe could theoretically bend space-time under rare conditions. Wild speculation suggests the carvings aren't just art but encoded instructions or warnings about these phenomena. A handful of fringe researchers go further, proposing the site as a remnant of advanced prehistoric technology, a stone radio designed to communicate across dimensions. While mainstream science rejects these ideas, they persist in part because the rocks resist easy explanation. What's fascinating is how these modern myths echo ancient ones. The Cherokee never described Judaculla as an alien, but his supernatural traits, otherworldly strength, control over the elements parallel contemporary accounts of extraterrestrial beings. Perhaps it's human nature to frame the unexplained in the language of our times. Where ancestors saw a slant-eyed giant, we now imagine visitors from distant galaxies. The truth may lie somewhere in between, buried in the interplay of geology, cultural memory, and the universal need to make sense of the inexplicable. Whether interdimensional portal, sacred site, or simply a place where the Earth's odd physics collide, Judaculla Rocks remains a canvas for our deepest wonderings, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to stay within the lines of conventional understanding. Time is the silent enemy of Judaculla Rocks, wearing away at the carvings far more effectively than any vandal's chisel. Acid rain, a modern scourge born of industrial pollution, eats gently but relentlessly at the soapstone surface. Each raindrop carries trace amounts of sulfuric and nitric acid, dissolving the talc-rich rock molecule by molecule. Over decades, glyphs once sharp enough to catch fingernails have softened into ghostly impressions, their edges blurred like ink on wet paper. Nearby coal plants and vehicle emissions worsen the damage, leaving a chalky residue where ancient artists once pressed their tools. Climate change compounds the threat, increasing the frequency of heavy downpours that accelerate erosion. Even the breath of visitors plays a role, tiny droplets of moisture from thousands of exhales condensing on the stone, fostering microbial growth that etches microscopic channels through the carvings. Human hands inflict more immediate harm. Despite protective fencing and surveillance cameras, graffiti mars sections of the outcrop, names, dates, and crude symbols scratched beside thousand-year-old art. In 2019, a viral social media post showing tourists posing atop the sacred rocks sparked outrage, their shoe treads grinding dirt into fragile grooves. The cumulative effect of such trespass is measurable. LiDAR scans reveal that foot traffic around the main boulders has compacted the soil, altering water drainage and causing subsurface cracks that threaten to split the stone. Cherokee elder Marcy Sornock recalls finding chewing gum pressed into a spiral petroglyph. Like someone spit on our history, these threats have galvanized the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians into action. Partnering with the Archaeological Conservancy, they launched a campaign in 2021 to have the site designated as a traditional cultural property, a federal status that would place Judaculla rocks on equal footing with landmarks like Mount Shasta or the Bears Ears National Monument. This classification recognizes landscapes as living components of indigenous heritage rather than static artifacts. The proposal includes buffer zones to limit development, educational programs teaching proper stewardship, and controlled access modeled after the Cherokee's own seasonal protocols. "We don't want to lock it away," explains Tribal Historic Preservation Officer Jeremy Wilson. "We want to care for it the way our ancestors intended, with respect, not rules." Their efforts face bureaucratic hurdles. Opposition from local landowners fearing property restrictions nearly derailed early negotiations, while some archaeologists argue the designation could impede research. But the Cherokee counter with compelling precedent. At California's Sogorea Te Mound, similar protections reduced vandalism by 90% through community monitoring rather than heavy policing. Adaptive solutions are already bearing fruit at Judaculla. Biodegradable geotextile mats now shield vulnerable carvings during storms, while a Cherokee Youth Corps carefully removes lichen with cotton swabs dipped in distilled water. Perhaps most innovative is the Virtual Stewardship Program, where augmented reality apps allow visitors to explore high-resolution 3D models of the glyphs, satisfying curiosity without physical contact. The rocks themselves seem to respond to this care. Since the tribe reintroduced traditional tobacco blessings at the site in 2018, elders note fewer incidents of graffiti and a resurgence of native plants around the outcrop. It's as if Judaculla's legend still holds power. Those who approach with reverence find their efforts multiplied, while disrespect invites consequences both cultural and ecological. The carvings may fade, but the lesson endures. Some boundaries exist for a reason, and the line between preservation and loss is as thin as a soapstone vein. In a race against time and erosion, universities and tribal partners have turned to cutting-edge technology to preserve Judaculla rocks for future generations. Teams from Western Carolina University and the University of Tennessee have spent years laser scanning every square inch of the carvings, creating ultra-high-resolution 3D models accurate to within half a millimeter. These digital twins capture details invisible to the naked eye, tool marks revealing whether a glyph was pecked, ground, or incised, microscopic wear patterns showing which symbols were touched most frequently over centuries. The process involves bathing the soapstone in structured light patterns from multiple angles, while specialized cameras record how the surface distorts the beams, building a topographic map of every groove and ridge. One particularly ambitious project even simulated weathering patterns, predicting how specific carvings will degrade over the next 500 years under various climate scenarios. But these preservation efforts spark complex ethical debates. While digital models allow global access without physical wear on the originals, some Cherokee elders question whether virtual replicas should be publicly available at all. "You wouldn't broadcast sacred ceremonies on YouTube," notes tribal historian Tom Belt. The Eastern Band has negotiated strict protocols. Certain ceremonial glyphs appear blurred in public models, while full-resolution versions remain accessible only to cultural stewards. Universities now employ digital repatriation policies, returning control of scans to the tribe, who decide what knowledge gets shared and with whom. It's a delicate balance between preserving heritage and respecting living traditions, between the academic ideal of open access and the indigenous right to cultural privacy. The technology itself keeps evolving. Recent advances in photogrammetry allow smartphone apps to capture decent 3D models using just ambient light, empowering Cherokee youth to document petroglyphs on reservation lands without expensive equipment. Meanwhile, haptic feedback gloves let users feel digital carvings through precise vibrations, adding a tactile dimension to virtual exploration. Some experimental projects even use augmented reality to superimpose how glyphs may have looked when freshly carved, their grooves painted with ochre and charcoal as oral histories describe. Yet for all their sophistication, these digital surrogates can't replicate the presence of standing before the actual rocks. The way morning mist clings to certain carvings first, or how afternoon sunlight makes serpentine designs seem to writhe across the stone. The Cherokee concept of Elohi, the spiritual energy of a place, resists digitization. As Belt observes, the rocks aren't just information, they're relatives. This tension between technological preservation and embodied experience lies at the heart of modern conservation. The lasers can capture every physical detail, but some mysteries, the ones that live in the space between the grooves, the land, and those who honor them, may forever remain beyond the reach of even our most advanced tools. Buried in the archives of the Western Carolina University Archaeology Lab lies an object that might hold the key to understanding Judaculla rocks, if only we could decipher its purpose. Known as the Judaculla stick, this 3-foot-long wooden rod was discovered in the 1950s just a mile from the petroglyph site, preserved by sheer chance in an oxygen-poor bog. At first glance, it looks unremarkable weathered oak darkened by centuries of tannins, its surface pitted with age. But turn it under the light and intricate carvings emerge, a spiral matching those on the soapstone boulders, notches spaced at precise intervals, and at one end, a series of shallow grooves that eerily mirror the 7-footed prints. The stick's discovery sparked immediate debate. Early researchers assumed it was a measuring tool, its notches corresponding to standardized length used in Cherokee architecture. Experimental tests showed these increments aligned perfectly with the gaps between certain petroglyphs, suggesting the stick could have been a blueprint for transferring designs from one surface to another. But Cherokee knowledge keepers offered a different interpretation. Elders from the Eastern Band identified the spiral motif as a symbolic pathway, a representation of the journey between worlds in traditional stomp dances. The notches, they argued, might tally ceremonial cycles rather than measurements, each groove marking a generation of rituals performed at the rocks. Then there's the enigma of the stick's tapered end. Microscopic analysis revealed traces of red ochre and beeswax embedded in its fibers, substances used historically in Cherokee medicine bundles. This led some anthropologists to propose the stick was a ritual object, perhaps a talking stick passed between speakers during sacred gatherings. Others noted its resemblance to divining rods described in 18th century Cherokee hunting prayers, tools believed to channel spiritual guidance. The most tantalizing theory came from linguist Dr. Margaret Bender, who observed that the stick's carvings align with rare verb forms in the Cherokee language, hinting it might encode mnemonic prompts for oral traditions now lost. What makes the Judaculla stick so compelling is how it bridges the tangible and the mystical. Carbon dating places its creation around the same period as the petroglyph's peak use, between 800 and 1,200 years ago. Yet, unlike the enduring soapstone, wood is ephemeral. That this singular artifact survived suggests it held extraordinary significance, carefully curated until buried or lost. Its very fragility deepens the mystery. Was it one of many such rods or a unique key to interpreting the rocks? Current research takes an interdisciplinary approach. Botanists study the oak's growth rings to reconstruct climate conditions when the tree was felled. Cherokee artists recreate the carvings using traditional tools, testing how the markings catch firelight during night ceremonies. Meanwhile, computational anthropologists have modeled the stick as a potential Rosetta Stone, inputting its symbols into algorithms trained on petroglyph patterns from across the Americas. So far, no definitive answers have emerged, only richer questions. Perhaps the stick's true power lies in its resistance to categories. It refuses to be just a tool, just art, or just a ritual object. Like the petroglyphs themselves, it exists in the liminal space between practicality and spirituality, between record-keeping and storytelling. To hold it, as conservators do with gloved hands every few years for condition checks, is to feel the weight of generations who shaped it, used it, and ultimately left it as a whisper across time. Whether blueprint, prayer, or something beyond our modern frameworks, the Judaculla stick remains a silent interlocutor between worlds, waiting for the day its full language might be spoken again. Standing in the shadow of Judaculla rocks on a quiet morning, something extraordinary happens. A single spoken word seems to linger in the air longer than it should, bouncing between the boulders with unnatural clarity. This isn't just an echo. It's a phenomenon that researchers call archaeoacoustics, the study of how ancient cultures might have harnessed natural soundscapes for ritual or communication. The soapstone outcrop acts like a giant amplifier, with specific carvings positioned at nodal points where sound waves converge. Recent experiments by a team from the University of Tennessee revealed that chanting near the seven-footed prints produces a harmonic resonance, as if the grooves themselves are tuning forks vibrating to ancient frequencies. The Cherokee have long known about this acoustic magic. Elders speak of the rocks that talk back, recounting ceremonies where shamans would strike certain glyphs with quartz pebbles to produce tones that carried for miles. Modern audio analysis confirms their stories when struck. Spirals and cupules emit pure frequencies between 110 and 130 Hz, a range known to induce trance states in ritual settings worldwide. Even more striking, the largest boulder's concave face acts as a natural parabolic reflector, focusing whispers uttered near its base into audible speech 30 feet away. For a culture without written language, these properties would have transformed the site into a living soundboard, where messages could be broadcast across valleys or layered into chants during sacred gatherings. But the acoustics here hold darker notes too. During thunderstorms, low-frequency rumbles from distant lightning interact with the soapstone's iron veins, creating infrasound tones too deep for human ears to hear but known to trigger feelings of unease or awe. Cherokee stories describe Judaculla's voice as thunder underground, a vibration that made bones hum. It's possible these physiological effects were deliberately incorporated into rituals, using the landscape's natural acoustics to simulate the giant's presence. Anthropologist Dr. Lisa Wolfe notes that similar infrasound phenomena at European megaliths like Stonehenge correlate with accounts of supernatural encounters. The body reacts before the mind understands. You feel watched, stirred, as if something ancient is reaching through the stone. Cutting-edge laser vibrometry has mapped how sound travels across the carvings, revealing hidden design logic. Glyphs positioned along fissures in the rock produce cascading echoes when activated in sequence, suggesting ceremonial sound paths where participants moved between stations. One particularly eerie discovery involves a cluster of zigzag patterns that, when vocalized near at dawn, generate interference patterns mimicking the Cherokee word for awaken. Whether intentional or emergent, these acoustic properties blur the line between art and instrument, turning the entire outcrop into a kind of lithic symphony waiting for the right hands or voices to play it. Yet the fullest understanding comes not from microphones but from lived experience. Eastern band musician Aaron Reed spent months composing melodies based on the rock's resonant frequencies using traditional river cane flutes. "The stones taught me songs we'd forgotten," he says. At certain pitches, the carvings themselves seem to join the performance. Wind whistling through grooves adds ghostly harmonics, while loose scree shifts in rhythmic response to drumbeats. It's a reminder that Judaculla rocks was never meant to be seen in silence. The true power of this place vibrates just beyond hearing, in the space where geology becomes song, and where every echo carries the shadow of voices that haven't spoken for 1,000 years. Long before modern medicine, the Cherokee people turned to Judaculla rocks not just for spiritual guidance but as a living pharmacy, a place where every groove and depression in the soapstone held the potential to heal. Elders spoke of rainwater collecting in certain carved spirals, imbued with Judaculla's power to cure ailments when sipped or applied to wounds. These medicine cups, as they were called, weren't random hollows. They were intentionally placed where mineral-rich runoff from the soapstone mixed with rainwater, creating a natural antiseptic brew. Historical accounts from 19th-century ethnographers document Cherokee families traveling for days to collect this sacred water, storing it in intricately carved gourds to treat everything from fevers to infections. Even today, some traditional healers whisper of its potency, though they caution that the water loses its power if taken without proper prayers or offerings. The rock's healing properties extended beyond physical remedies. Cherokee stories tell of night-goers, those plagued by bad dreams or spiritual unrest who would sleep near the carvings under a full moon. Specific glyphs, particularly the 7-footed prints, were believed to absorb negative energy when touched during rituals. A 2016 study by medical anthropologists found that certain soapstone minerals, like magnesite, do exhibit subtle piezoelectric properties, potentially generating weak electromagnetic fields under pressure. While far from conclusive, this discovery offers a tantalizing link between ancient practices and measurable phenomena. Could the act of pressing hands to these carvings have produced sensations interpreted as healing energy? Protection rituals took on dramatic forms here. Warriors preparing for battle would trace the outline of the Thunderbird glyph with a blend of crushed galena and bear fat, creating a reflective paste said to deflect enemy arrows. Mothers tied pouches of soil from the site's base around infants' necks to ward off the shadow sickness, a cultural concept resembling modern descriptions of failure to thrive. Most haunting are accounts of the shaking cure, where individuals possessed by harmful spirits were bound to the largest boulder at dawn while shamans chanted until the invading force fled, a practice some historians connect to early observations of seizure disorders. European settlers adapted these traditions with their own twists. Appalachian folk healers of the 1800s believed Judaculla's handprint could amplify the power of granny magic when combined with mountain herbs like ginseng or bloodroot. Diaries from the Civil War era describe soldiers carrying soapstone fragments scraped from the carvings as lucky talismans, while moonshiners allegedly placed shards in stills to keep the devil out of the brew. This cultural blending created a unique fusion of indigenous and frontier folklore, where Judaculla transformed from a Cherokee giant into a more ambiguous Appalachian spirit, both feared and courted for his gifts. Modern visitors still report strange experiences hinting at the site's enduring mystique. Hikers speak of sudden relief from chronic pain after resting against certain boulders, while others describe an overwhelming sense of calm near the water-worn glyphs. Scientists dismiss these accounts as placebo effects amplified by the serene forest setting, but Cherokee knowledge keepers suggest another explanation, that the rocks remember their original purpose. In their view, the carvings aren't inert art but living contracts, agreements between humans and the land that persist across generations. Whether through chemistry, belief, or something beyond current understanding, Judaculla rocks continues to blur the line between medicine and miracle, inviting us to consider how deeply healing is woven into both stone and story. Judaculla's legend has slithered from ancient soapstone into the neon glow of modern pop culture, morphing with each retelling to fit new imaginations. The hit series Outlander brought the myth to mainstream audiences when Claire Randall, the show's time-traveling heroine, encounters the carvings in Season 4. Though fictionalized, the portrayal taps into a very real fascination. The rocks become a portal to the supernatural, echoing Cherokee warnings about the giant's enduring presence. But Outlander isn't alone. Appalachian novelist Sharon McCrum wove Judaculla into her ballad series, reimagining the slant-eyed giant as a spectral judge who punishes those who harm the land. These adaptations, while thrilling, often strip the story of its cultural roots, reducing Judaculla to a boogeyman rather than a complex spiritual force. Music, too, has echoed the legend's whispers. Indie folk band The Mountain Goats penned The Ballad of Judaculla Rock, a haunting track that frames the carvings as a puzzle box of secrets. Lyrics like "The stone remembers what the hand forgets" mirror Cherokee beliefs about the rocks as living memory. Even heavier sounds have embraced the mystery metal band Mastodon's album Blood Mountain features artwork inspired by the glyphs, their jagged lines and distorted figures evoking Judaculla's otherworldly aura. These artistic nods, whether intentional or subconscious, prove the myth's adaptability. It's no longer just a Cherokee story. It's become a metaphor for the unresolved, the ancient, the untamed. Television and film have taken liberties that blur fact and folklore. A supernatural episode hinted the carvings were a demonic prison, while the History Channel's Ancient Aliens notoriously linked them to extraterrestrial visitations, a theory Cherokee scholars dismiss as disrespectful reductionism. Yet these portrayals shape public perception. Tourists now arrive at the site expecting paranormal spectacles, some even bringing EMF meters to hunt for Judaculla's ghost. The irony is palpable. A sacred place becomes a backdrop for sensationalism, its true significance overshadowed by pop culture's glow. Books straddle the line between homage and exploitation. Tony Horwitz's Spying on the South treats the rocks as a historical oddity, while Cherokee writer Annette Saunner Clapsaddle's Even As We Breathe recenters them as a touchstone of indigenous resilience. The divide reflects a broader tension when outsiders co-opt the story. They often erase its guardians, yet some creators collaborate respectfully. The Dark Shadows audio drama Bloodline consulted Eastern Band elders, weaving Cherokee voices into its gothic tale. It's a rare example of pop culture not just taking but listening. Perhaps the most unexpected Judaculla reference lurks in video games. Red Dead Redemption 2 hides a petroglyph Easter egg in its Appalachian-inspired landscapes, sparking online debates about its meaning. Gamers dissect the pixelated symbols with the same fervor archaeologists apply to the real ones, proving the myth's power transcends medium. But as the legend spreads digitally, its roots risk being forgotten. TikTok trends reduce Judaculla to a creepypasta villain, while mystery hunters trespass on sacred ground for viral content. The Cherokee response to this cultural whirlwind has been nuanced. Some elders, like storyteller Freeman Owl, leverage the spotlight to educate, hosting panels at Comic-Cons to correct misconceptions. Others, like linguist Tom Belt, critique the commodification. Judaculla isn't a character. He's a relative. The Eastern Band's recent partnership with Disney Plus for an animated short marks a turning point, a chance to reclaim the narrative. Titled The Slant-Eyed Giant, it frames the legend through Cherokee eyes with glyphs that animate not as cryptic clues but as a living language. Pop culture's embrace of Judaculla is a double-edged sword. It amplifies the mystery, yes, but also dilutes it. Each retelling adds layers, some golden, some gaudy, that obscure the original story. Yet beneath the noise, the soapstone endures. However Hollywood distorts it, however gamers pixelate it, the rocks remain. They don't need the spotlight, they've outlasted empires. And when the trends fade, Judaculla's mark will still be there, waiting for those who come to listen, not just to project. For all we've uncovered about Judaculla rocks, the site guards its deepest secrets with silent defiance. 3 fundamental questions continue to baffle researchers and Cherokee elders alike who precisely carved these glyphs. Why choose this specific hillside, and do the symbols coalesce into a decipherable message? Each puzzle branches into tantalizing possibilities. The identity of the carvers remains shrouded despite advanced archaeology. While Cherokee oral history credits Judaculla, physical evidence suggests multiple hands across generations. Tool mark analysis reveals at least 5 distinct styles, some glyphs pecked with stone hammers, others incised with precision that implies metal tools. This raises provocative questions. Were later artists adding to existing carvings, or does the diversity reflect a cultural handoff between different groups over centuries? The soapstone's unnatural softness only deepens the intrigue. Archaeologists have found no quarrying marks or tool fragments nearby, as if the creators vanished without leaving their implements behind. Location presents another enigma. This isn't merely a matter of geology but sacred geography. The site occupies a transitional zone where the Blue Ridge Mountains yield to the Piedmont, straddling ecological boundaries that held spiritual significance for southeastern tribes. Ground-penetrating radar shows the boulders sit atop intersecting quartz veins, a feature many indigenous cultures associated with earth energies. Even the practical advantages fascinate. The hillside acts as a natural amphitheater, amplifying sound toward the valley below, while the soapstone's magnetic anomalies make compasses spin wildly. Was this a deliberate choice, a place where nature's oddities heightened ritual experiences? Or did some lost property of the stone itself, now weathered away, make it irresistible to ancient artists? The biggest mystery lingers in the glyph's potential meaning. Are we looking at a ceremonial map, an astronomical record, or something more intimate, personal visions, clan signatures, or even territorial claims? Certain patterns tantalize with their resemblance to later Cherokee syllabics, while others echo symbols from distant Mississippian sites. A cluster of dots near the western edge matches the Pleiades star cluster's formation as it appeared 3,000 years ago. Could this be a celestial calendar? Or consider the recurring horned figure. Some interpret it as a shaman in ritual headdress, others as a supernatural guardian, and a bold few whisper of encounters with beings beyond conventional understanding. Emerging technologies promise fresh breakthroughs. Hyperspectral imaging, initially developed for planetary geology, can detect mineral changes invisible to the eye, perhaps revealing faded pigments or erased carvings. Artificial intelligence trained on global petroglyph databases might spot overlooked connections between Judaculla's symbols and other indigenous sign systems. Most exciting are advancements in acoustic archaeology. Researchers plan to sonically map the entire outcrop, testing if specific glyph combinations produce harmonic frequencies when activated in sequence. Imagine discovering that these carvings weren't just seen but played like some colossal instrument. But technology has limits. The Eastern Band Cherokee caution that some knowledge isn't meant to be extracted through scanners and algorithms. Their oral traditions describe the rocks as alive, not metaphorically, but as entities with agency. Tribal linguist Lawrence Panther recounts an elder's warning: "The stones will tell you what they want you to know, no more." This cultural perspective reframes our modern obsession with solving mysteries. Perhaps the glyph's power lies precisely in their resistance to definitive interpretation, their ability to straddle the line between revelation and enigma. Future discoveries may illuminate technical details, the types of tools used, the sequence of carving, but the deeper truth might be this: some stories are written not to be read but to be felt. As the mist curls around those ancient grooves at dawn, even the most skeptical visitor senses it. Judaculla Rocks wasn't created to answer our questions, but to remind us how much wonder still exists beyond understanding. For centuries, the Judaculla Rocks have stood at the crossroads of science and legend, a place where hard evidence and haunting folklore intertwine like the serpentine grooves carved into their surface. Archaeologists measure the depth of each glyph, tracing tool marks to reconstruct forgotten techniques, while Cherokee elders speak of a slant-eyed giant whose claws shaped the stone with supernatural precision. Historians debate whether the symbols are celestial maps or territorial markers, Yet visitors who stand beneath the towering soapstone boulders often describe something deeper, an inexplicable resonance, as if the land itself remembers. This is the enduring magic of Judaculla rocks, a mystery that refuses to be neatly categorized, where every scientific revelation only deepens the questions. The carvings challenge our modern distinctions between fact and myth. Laboratory analyses confirm the soapstone's unique acoustic properties, validating indigenous accounts of the rocks singing during storms. Yet those same studies can't explain why certain glyphs seem to darken before rainfall, or why compass needles spin wildly near the seven-footed prints. We can map the molecular composition of the stone, but not the meaning behind the horned figures that stare back from the rock face, their elongated limbs frozen in motion. Even the sharpest lasers and most sophisticated algorithms hit a wall when confronted with the rock's most profound secret, their ability to straddle worlds, speaking simultaneously to our empirical minds and our hunger for wonder. What makes this site unforgettable isn't just its antiquity, but its living presence. Unlike relics gathering dust in museums, Judaculla rocks remain a vital touchstone for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, a classroom where elders teach children traditional stories under the same carvings their ancestors once touched. Scientists may debate the glyph's age, but for the Cherokee, time collapses here. The past isn't distant. It's woven into the present through ceremony, language, and shared memory. This duality gives the site its power. It's both an archaeological puzzle and a sacred landscape, a place where data and devotion coexist without contradiction. As we step back from these enigmatic boulders, their grooves worn smooth by countless hands and endless seasons, one invitation remains. What do you think these carvings mean? Are they the work of ancient astronomers tracking celestial cycles, the signatures of shamans bridging worlds, or something beyond our current understanding? Share your theories in the comments, but remember, this isn't just a discussion, it's a responsibility. If you visit Judaculla rocks, tread lightly, listen more than you speak. Let the stones guide your curiosity, not the other way around. After all, some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only honored, so they may whisper their secrets for generations yet to come.